You described yourself as a constitutionalist.
Right.
What does that mean?
That means that you have high respect for the Constitution, and it's the only oath that you take when you go into office as a congressman, or even when you serve in the military, or you're sworn in as a president. You swear to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, domestic and foreign. And that contract is very important, and I believe that our Constitution was probably the best ever written as an agreement between the people and the government. And it's imperfect. Nothing is perfect that man creates. But the principle of the rule of law should be sought after. That is, that if you have a contract, you should follow it. If you disagree with part of that contract, you should change it in the proper manner. But ignoring it is the worst thing you can do. And that's what we've done. If you take the war issue, we don't declare wars anymore. We go to war under UN resolutions. We go into war for all kinds of ill-advised reasons.
You can't go to war without congressional approval, and that's not a threat to our national security. That's something internal affairs. Why should we send hundreds of thousands of Americans to die in a civil war? I mean, are we over in Russia right now over Chechnya? I mean, it wouldn't make any sense. Did we go to war over Hong Kong? You know, we should follow the Constitution and the advice of the founders. Don't go looking for dragons to slay. I mean, why should we go and provoke and look for trouble? We should talk to people, negotiate, be diplomatic, and trade with people. We do much better trading with Vietnam than we did with fighting with them, and we lost 60,000 men there. It makes so much common sense, and it's so appealing to the majority of Americans. Let me tell you, I really believe that. We don't need somebody in Washington telling us what we can do, because we don't have perfect knowledge. And that's the magnificence of our Constitution and our republic. We sort out the difficult problems at local levels, and we don't have one case fit all.
Americans want more from their government. They expect the government to do more for them than they expected, say, 15 years ago. Yeah. How do you reverse that trend?
Well, I think that's the real contest, because obviously the people that work for me and campaign for me want exactly the opposite. They want to get the government off their backs. And, 52% might want a Democratic president, but that doesn't sound all that strong. I mean, right now the Democratic Congress isn't rating very high. And that's a healthy sign that the American people are waking up and they're getting disgusted with what they're getting. So maybe they will come to realize that we need less government, not more government. If they're unhappy, and we can hardly argue that we've had minimal government over these past 50 years. All we do is have the expansion of government, and that fits my argument that we have too much government. We need a lot less.
The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, is important to a lot of Americans. Why do you think that is?
Well, the founders were very clear about it, and the assumption went without saying that everybody can have a gun to go out hunting because everybody was a hunter. But they wanted to be explicit that individuals owned guns because they never wanted to have the populace disarmed. Matter of fact, they encouraged and they believed that each community and each state would have a militia, which was just a group of people who could be called up in an emergency to be deputized for protection. But the gun really was, that Second Amendment was provided, ironically, and a lot of people don't understand this, but it was to protect against abuse of government, because they needed guns to protect against the abuse of the king. They saw the Second Amendment as very, very important. Of course, I see it as so important because I think it was the lack of respect for the Second Amendment that contributed a whole lot to the disaster of 9/11. Because if individuals are responsible to defend themselves or their property, my guess is that if the government hadn't taken over security on the airlines, maybe the airlines would have said that a pilot could have kept a pistol up front and don't let anybody mess around. But unfortunately, before 9/11, they weren't allowed to have guns. They're still really not allowed. At the same time, the government told us not to resist. Right. So they did exactly the opposite. No wonder, well, this was an opening for people who wanted to do us harm. But the Second Amendment is crucial. And if you think about it, the lack of respect for the Second Amendment is in the areas of our country that needs the Second Amendment the most. And this is, to me, so discriminatory, and that's in our inner cities. You go to the inner cities where there's the most crime, and yet if you're a law-abiding citizen, you're not allowed to defend against the crime. Right. So you're not allowed to have a gun in the inner city. So this, to me, is discriminatory.